We can find lessons from God throughout this world. My father, he likes to do devotionals every now and then at the congregation where I grew up, and he does some based on nature. He has a mind for those kind of things, and I guess I come by it honestly because I think about those things too. And I heard a guy talking about Sequia redwood trees, and he was trying to apply some of those things to the Bible. And I heard that, and I wanted to further upon the things that he was saying. And so I want to talk about Sequia redwood trees and what in the world do they have to do with our Christianity. So number one, Sequoia redwood trees. You know, those are those big trees out in California, you know, the ones that that you can drive a car through, and they've got that cut out there, you know, and drive. Man, those things are huge. I've never been out to California, but one of these days I'd like to go and I'd like to see those, because ever since I was a little kid, being able to look at a tree in which several people have to hold hands to wrap themselves around that big tree, that's pretty amazing. I mean, I remember when I was a child looking at those pictures of the tunnels that they made through the trees so that you could drive through it, and man, I thought that's just so amazing. And it's beautiful. You go and you look at these trees, and they're beautiful trees, and you know what? They've got a lot of lessons for us, though. And the first one is this. You know what? They can grow anywhere. They can grow just about anywhere. They've tried it. They can grow anywhere, but they thrive in the right environment. They have taken those trees, and they have grown them in South Georgia. They've grown them in Florida. They've even grown them in Arizona. But you know what? And they'll grow in all those places. You can find these redwood trees in these various places, and they'll grow. But they thrive in the right environment. You know, these trees, they thrive in the place that they are because of coastal fogs. And the coastal fogs come rolling in all the time. Yeah, they get rain, they get all those things, but the coastal fog keeps them growing strong. And you can take them out of that environment, and yes, they'll grow. But that is a perfect environment for them to grow so big. You know, think about Christians, that's the same thing. You know, a Christian can grow anywhere, but you put Christians with other Christians in a good environment, right? And they're going to thrive. You know, right now when we're all separated, I fear that for some, that this is a time that they have been slack. Instead of putting forth an effort to be good, solid, sound Christians, they've taken this as a time for vacation from the church. I hope that's not the case for everybody here, but I know that people are doing that. They have to be. I pray that's not the case, but I know that if there's nobody sitting there watching, and that there's nobody taking an account for them, you know, nobody maybe checking off that they're there. If mom doesn't know if they're going or not, they may not come. They may not be looking at the videos that are being posted. They may not do that. They may not worship at all. They may never have worshiped since the time that this all began. And while, yes, for a Christian, you know, this could be a time where you could still grow. You can grow in any environment. You can take advantage of whatever's going on. But you know what? The best place for a Christian is to be supported by other Christians in a sound, solid congregation doing the work of the Lord. So we need to be like these redwood trees. You know what? We need to be able to grow anywhere. but we should thrive in the right environment. Number 2. Did you know that a Sequia redwood tree never stops growing? They never stop. There's no limit. I learned a while back, and I'm feeling it right now. I know my beard trimmer quit during this quarantine stuff, and I haven't even gone and looked for one, so my beard's getting a little thicker. And while it's not the thickest, I did find out a few years ago from a friend of mine who was trying to convince me, man, you need to grow your beard out. And I said, well, how long are you going to grow your beard? And he said, terminal length. And I was like, what in the world is that? And he said, well, that's the length at which your beard stops growing on its own. We should never stop growing. In Ephesians 4, verses 15 and 16, it says, but speaking the truth in love, we may grow up in all things into him who is the head, even Christ, from whom all the body fitly framed and knit together through that which every joint supplieth according to the working in due measure of each several part, maketh the increase of the body unto the building up of itself in love. In 1 Peter 2 and verse 2, as newborn babes long for the spiritual milk which is without guile, that ye may grow thereby unto salvation. We want spiritual food. We want things that are going to help us to grow. And the way we grow, the way we get that spiritual food, is by looking to the Word of God. Philippians 3, verses 13 and 14 says, brethren, I count not myself yet to have laid hold, but one thing I do, forgetting the things which are behind and stretching forward to the things which are before, I press on toward the goal unto the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. Always striving to do better, right? Always striving. You know what? If you're going to grow, then you need to be better than you were the day before, right? As children, we all have done this. We grew it little bits at a time, right? Some more than others, right? But we grew. We need to grow, and we grow by getting that spiritual sustenance. That means that I'm always going to need to grow, because I'm always going to need sustenance. It's not like us as people, we get to a certain point and we start to decline in health, right? But as a Christian, we should just get stronger and stronger. Never stop growing. Number 3. Did you know that a Sequia redwood tree, its bark is a natural fire repellent? I mentioned this morning in Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 and following, and it says to put on the whole armor of God. Why? So that you may be able to stand the wiles of the devil, and be able to take up that shield of faith so that those fiery darts won't hurt us. You know what? We need to have a fire repellent built in. You know what? We should want to make sure that we're living our lives so that we don't ever want to go to hell. Now, I know that those are kind of uncomfortable thoughts, when we think about hell. Hell is eternal, and it's hot, and it's a place of destruction, and yet, people will go there, but the Christian ought not to. And the Christian ought to be able to withstand all those hurtful attacks that the devil has placed upon us in various ways. We need to be able to stand up against that and to come out on top. We should be like those redwood trees and have that natural fire repellent. Number 4. Did you know that a Sequia redwood tree, its roots are shallow, And when you think about that, you get a big tree and it has shallow roots. Well, that can be a problem, right? I used to live in Alabama, and we would have hurricanes that would come through, and every now and then you would see trees get toppled over. And they'd be toppled over because the winds, of course, were so strong, but sometimes you drive by those and you'd see their roots, sticking up out of the ground and realize, the roots didn't go that deep. And once the wind came, it blew them over. And then some, you could see where they would gotten old and the roots were brittle, and they, even though they were in the ground, they snapped off and it fell over anyway. The redwood trees, their roots are shallow, but you know how those massive trees stand up? Well, they stand up because even though the roots are shallow for their size, they're interwoven. They rely on each other. And so as the wind blows, and it blows on the tree, instead of knocking the tree down, it's got to knock the whole forest down. And it's not going to do that, right? So they hold each other up. In Ephesians 4 and verse 16, it says, "From whom all the body fitly framed and knit together, through that which every joint supplieth, according to the working and due measure of each several part, maketh the increase of the body unto the building up of itself in love." Brethren, we need to hold each other up by loving each other. Hold each other up. That's our job. And when the day comes, and hopefully it's very, very soon, when we get to come back together, then we all need to come back together and worship God and follow that as we see in Hebrews 10:24 and 25, so that we can come together and encourage each other, lift each other up. In Galatians 6, verse 1 and 2, "Brethren, that even if a man be overtaken in any trespass, ye who are spiritual, restore such a one in the spirit of gentleness, looking to thyself, lest thou also be tempted. Bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ." Not only should we support each other and keep each other up, but you know what? We need to help each other lighten the load by taking on each other's burdens. As Christians, we ought to be like these trees. We need to have our roots interwoven together so that we could support each other, hold each other up. Number 5. Another thing that they do, and this is great, I love this one, they grow tenaciously. We already talked about growth and how they can grow anywhere, but they thrive in the right environment. But this is interesting to me. They can grow. When you think about a tree falls over and it dies. That happens all the time. I mean, when it snows here, we're driving down the road. If you look up in the woods, you can see all these down trees all over the hillside. But now see what happens with a Sequia redwood is that it can fall over, and it can, it's fallen over. And at that point, a normal tree would die, right? But what happens with a Sequia redwood is that those limbs that it has, it'll start growing up and become its own tree. Matter of fact, if you go and you look out there are places, I understand, where you see a line of trees, and they weren't just planted in a row. What happened is a tree fell down, and then it grew. The branches still kept growing and made themselves trees in and of themselves. In Galatians 6:9 it says, "Let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not." Let's grow. Let's continue to grow. Let's continue to do good. In James 1 and verse 12 it says, "Blessed is the man that endureth temptation, for when he hath been approved, he shall receive the crown of life which the Lord promised to them that love Him. Brethren, we need to be able to endure temptation all throughout our life, all the way up to the very end. In 1 Corinthians 9 and verse 24, it says, "Know ye not that they that run in a race run all, but one receiveth the prize? Even so run, that ye may attain." Doesn't matter what life throws at us. Run so that you can get that prize. First Timothy 6, verses 11 and 12, it says, "But thou, O man of God, flee these things, and follow after righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, meekness. Fight the good fight of the faith. Lay hold of eternal life, whereunto thou wast called, and didst confess the good confession in the sight of many witnesses." You need to grow. Grow tenaciously. Grow because you have been fighting that good fight of faith. Last but not least, at any point in time, we could die. And the same goes for these trees. They don't live forever. They don't grow until they reach outer space. They don't do anything like that. They do die. And when they die, guess what they do? They give back to those that are around them. So when they die, they can, just like any tree, really, it will decompose and it will give sustenance to those trees around them. And that's what we ought to do. We ought to be able to be people that have such good lives, that we live such good lives that whenever we die, people miss us and they're thankful for us, and we help others to grow. Think about this. In 2 Corinthians 5, verses 6 through 8, it says, "Being therefore always of good courage, and knowing that whilst we are at home in the body, we are absent from the Lord, for we walk by faith, not by sight. We are of good courage, I say, and are willing rather to be absent from the body and to be at home with the Lord." And so, yes, we want to go to heaven. We want to go and be with God. That means that, yes, we're going to die someday. That's what this is. Just one of the things that's bothered me when I see Christians right now, and they are just completely out of their minds over this virus. I think about this one thing. You know what? If we're to die, we get to go and be with the Lord. That's better than what we have here. Now, I get it. There are things that we're concerned about. I'm trying to make sure that my family has things taken care of, so that whenever I'm gone, that they don't have to worry about anything. But we cannot live in fear, because if we live in fear of dying, that means that we do not have our life in order. You need to have your life right with the Lord. In Romans 14 and verse 8, it says, "For whether we live unto the Lord, or whether we die unto the Lord. Whether we live, therefore, or die, we are the Lord's." There are times in the Bible where we talk about different people and how they've gone on, and think about Joseph. And Joseph, when he dies, it says that he was gathered to his people. Brethren, we are each other's people. And when we die, we're gathered to our people. And those that are left behind, those that live on after we die, our lives should be a monument to them. It should be a monument to them that they can look to us and say, "You know what? It was so good when brother so-and-so, they did this, or brother so-and-so said this, or sister so-and-so did this, and you know what, they made such an impact on my life. That's why I'm doing this. I was talking with a friend of mine the other day, and he was talking about another preacher, and he said, he is the whole reason that I am a faithful gospel preacher today. He had joined the military and had fallen away and was not living righteously, and yet, here's this man that made sure that he was on the straight and narrow. When we die, are we going to be monuments to those that are around us? Are people going to think about us positively? Are they going to think, well, they sure were a good person, I guess. But they don't think anything else. They don't think about the spiritual heritage that we leave behind. And I guess the next question is this: are we leaving anything behind for people to think of us in that way? Brethren, are we like these Sequia redwood trees? Are we Christians that are going to grow no matter what environment that we're in? Are we going to grow tenaciously? Are we going to give back to those that are around us? Or are we going to support each other? What's going to happen? Are we going to live like this, like the things that we've said, or are we going to just do whatever we want, follow the world, and forget the things of God? I hope that you take advantage of this lesson and you think about it and think, you know what, I need to help out my brethren more. I need to be more supportive. I need to help them grow. I need to grow more. I hope you understand all the things that has been said, and I hope you take them to heart. And above all, I hope that after all this is said and done, all the lessons that we've had to hear being apart, I hope that when we get to be able to come back and worship together, and we're going to take advantage of every single opportunity that we get. And that we won't want to miss, because we know that we need to be able to encourage each other, and we need to grow ourselves. And so the lesson is yours. I thank you for all of your patience throughout this, and I hope that this is the last Sunday lesson that we have to hear while we're apart. And I pray that we can come back together very soon, and that we'll all be thankful for the opportunity that we have to serve our God in this country.